I have 8:30. So welcome to the Planning and Economic Development Council meeting on March 12th. And we'll start first, obviously calling the meeting to order and then asking for approval of the minutes from February 12th. And Councilmember Jurinsky?
I approve
minutes. Okay, great. Mm-hmm. I do as well. And we'll move on to, it looks like our one and only topic, which is the retail sales update by Bob.
All right, let's see if I can pull this off. Share. And no, that doesn't do it. Huh. Okay.
Are you sharing from?
I'm trying. It's present. Okay. But
do you see your PowerPoint?
I can see it, but I can't. Hold on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bob, you need to share the screen that you have the PowerPoint up on. So go to the windows and pull up the window. You said you have it up on your second screen.
Which one is the PowerPoint?
That one.
There you go.
And
you
then
guys
just,
can see that?
Just hit the presentation mode.
All right, I got it. There we go. All right, thanks. Okay, so thanks everybody for having us. Today we're going to be doing the 2024 annual retail sales tax update. My name is Bob Oliva. I'm in the business development department, and all of this information comes from the finance and budget department. So this is just retail sales tax. But we get this number directly from them, and we've checked it 3 times to make sure it's accurate. So let's get into it. First, we're going to do our business licenses by ward. This was last year's numbers. And it turns out 4 of the 6 wards increased their business licenses, and we increased the business licenses overall. There were only 2 wards that had a slight decrease. And of all the business licenses that we have, only 34% of those are retail. So the other bunch of that is industrial, office, and pretty much anything else, not retail sales tax generating. So let's get into it. So this is a little bit of what happened last year. This is a lot of the restaurant program. You can see that with the Cerebral Tap Room has opened, Lucky Strike is opened, the El Alba Cooperative, that was a 5-year plus effort between a whole bunch of different departments, mostly the SBDC. It was actually my first meeting when I got here 5.5 years ago, was an El Alba meeting. And so that was a very long, drawn out process, and we finally got it done. Kudos to SBDC and Tom Oldenburg from our department. And of course, these are some of the other restaurants. If you haven't been to Issaquah yet, it is a very nice restaurant. I've recommended to a few people and they came back thrilled. So go out and check out these restaurants that we opened last year. Most of them were restaurant program deals, except for the Lucky Strike one. And that's one of the new entertainment complexes. So please check it out. Okay, let's get into the actual sales tax. So this does go back to pre-COVID, and you'll see that these are the restaurants and bars, and you can see that they pretty much took their dip at COVID and then started climbing from there. But as you're going to see in almost all of our numbers, there is a rounding off from 2023 to 2024. So you can see it kind of flattening, and you're going to see this in almost all the numbers. For the discount stores, this was a little surprising. We did not expect the discount stores to see a drop last year, but that could be because folks like Walmart were starting to drop prices. So that if you've been to a Walmart, you see the rollback pricing everywhere. If you bought the same items after they've rolled back the pricing, you would have bought the same items for less money. So it's possible that what we're really just seeing is some of the places lowering their prices a little bit, the discount stores lowering their prices a little bit. But basically, they've had a pretty good run up, and it's kind of flattened out since then. Building materials. This is about one of the best charts you're ever going to see. It just chugs right along, and this has everything to do with all of the construction that's going on in Aurora. But up every year, and again, rounding off a little bit, only 2.75 in 2024. Auto dealers and parts. This is a very strange story because we know the auto business, the car business is in the tank right now, but the parts business is picking up the difference. But even the parts stores are in trouble now too. I think there's one of them that's teetering. And so you can see the same thing, up 12%, up 11%, and then rounding off to up almost flat, really. Electronics and computers, another surprise. We didn't see an electronic cycle like an iPhone cycle at the end of the year, and yet they were up about 4.5%. We did not expect that, so that's good news for the electronics folks. Those are not really durable goods. They don't last like 7 to 10 years, so the cycles are shorter. But this was a good surprise. Grocery stores. This was also a surprise. We didn't expect them to see a drop because, as you can see, they've been up every year since we've been tracking them. And then we see a little drop in 2024. So another flattening out of our numbers. Telecommunications, really the only thing interesting here was what happened during COVID. For some reason it dropped, but after that it went back up to before COVID numbers and has basically been flat ever since. So that's what's going on in the telecommunications business. Clothing and clothing accessories. Again, a little bit surprising that they're up 18% the year before last, and then up another 5%. So good news, but we do think this is a lot of the value-oriented players, which we'll be talking a little bit about in a minute. Beer, wine, and liquor. Now, this is both the liquor stores and the grocery stores. We used to separate them out, but this is the combination of them. And so we all saw a big bump when they were all open during COVID. And you can see it basically flattened out for the next 4 years, up a little bit, down a little bit. And when you add it all up, it's basically flat. So that's what's going on in the liquor business. If we are going into a recession, liquor does well in a recession. So we would expect this to see an uptick if we end up in a recession. Department stores, not surprising they took the dip after COVID and have never come back. But they were up just slightly last year, and we don't expect them to ever get back to pre-COVID levels. We're just hoping they can survive. So this is what's going on in department stores. And sporting goods, hobby, books, music. We know this what happened to sporting goods in COVID. Everybody went out, wanted to go outside, bought up all kinds of sporting goods. And then they had 2 years of relatively flat numbers, up a little bit, but now they've taken their hit. And you can see this in, the closing of Dick's Sporting Goods and some of the other players. So sporting goods is still doing not as well as they should be, but they're doing better than they were doing before COVID. So, okay. So furniture, this is your ultimate durable good. Furniture will last a very long time. People bought a lot of it during COVID, and it has nosedived since then. If you have been watching TV or the internet, you have probably seen more Furniture Row commercials and American Furniture Warehouse commercials. Everything's on sale. There could be some real bargains if this continues, because they've had basically 3 years of just lower sales. So keep an eye out for furniture bargains. And then here's the total. So all of that being said, we have been up every year that we've been tracking it, and are way north of pre-COVID levels, but there is a rounding off going here. So I would not expect this to continue. And we don't have a lot of vision going into the next 6 months or so. So we're kind of waiting to see what happens. But let's talk a little bit about, well, we'll get to questions in a second. Let's talk a little bit about some of what's going on out there with the stores. So in the food business, it turns out that last year, the number one player in the country with the most increases in sales across the country was Raising Cane. Right, they had a 12.4% increase last year. Chili's was right behind them at 11.7%. And as we've said, a lot of this has to do with packaging. So Chili's, I think they were number 2 or 3 in the country, and that's all off of their 3 for Me program, where you can get 3 appetizers for $20. That still is working very well. And there's another player coming down the pipe that's doing really well in the country. They came in 7th in the country, and it's Dave's Hot Chicken. And that's kind of a relatively new concept around here. We've got a few of them, and we expect to see more of those openings. So they're almost up there with In-N-Out Burger kind of levels. So In-N-Out was also one of the top players last year. And to round that off, it was Raising Cane's, In-N-Out, 7 Brew Coffee, and PJ's Coffee. And that's in the what they call the drive-through business. And then in the sit-down business, number 1 was actually Chipotle, and right behind it was Chili's. Chuck E. Cheese is back. I kind of haven't been to one of those in a while, and they are up 10.5%. I'm surprised they're still open, but apparently they are. And if you kind of follow any of what that company used to be, there was actually a competitor. One of the owners actually started a competing company, and there were 2 versions of Chuck E. Cheese, and they competed with each other, and now they're gone. Or when they left, all of those animatronic figures are highly collectible, and there are people running around the country trying to buy up every one of those and have their own little band at their house or something. It's really amazing. Anyway, that's what's going on with Chuck E. Cheese. And let's see what other. Walgreens is actually splitting from their parent company. So about 7 or 8 years ago, they got bought by a company called Boots Alliance in England. They're now separating. Walgreens is going to separate and become Walgreens all by itself again. And that's probably good for Walgreens. But they are closing 1,200 stores. CVS is closing 300 stores, but they're also going to be opening a much smaller format store. So Walgreens can be 15 to 17, 18,000 square feet. These guys are going to be opening like a pharmacy only CVS's. So that's something new that's coming down the pike. Nordstrom's is buying out. The Nordstrom's family is buying out Nordstrom's from it being a public company. They're taking it private again. So that's good news for Nordstrom's. And let's see. That is about it. So now we can get to questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Jurinsky, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I'm concerned with the pretty, I mean, it seems like we're kind of at a stalemate. And that's very concerning to me. Bob, what do we see kind of coming down the pike on this, to boost retail, attract, more retail? I mean, what does this look like? I mean, what the presentation you just showed me is actually extremely concerning to me.
Yeah, it is the first time since I've been here that we've rounded off like this and looking at flat numbers. And so it is concerning. There are a few bright spots there. Burlington Coat Factory, which is now called Burlington Stores, just bought 44 of the Bed Bath & Beyond locations. So we're hoping that we'll get a few of those here. They haven't announced where they're going yet. But where they have opened in a Bed Bath & Beyond, they doubled the amount of traffic that store was getting when it was a Bed Bath & Beyond. So that's good news for whatever center it ends up in. They'll double the traffic that Bed Bath & Beyond was doing. There's also another company called Ollie's Bargains out of the East Coast that bought up about 40 of the Big Lots stores. Now, Ollie's isn't in Colorado yet, but they're in Kansas, Texas, and Oklahoma. So they're right up on our border. So they may be buying a bunch of the Big Lots here. We don't know yet. So it looks like there are these players that are coming in and backfilling some of these big boxes. And so that's good news. But they aren't the premium players. Burlington is a sort of a step down from Bed Bath & Beyond demographically, and Ollie's is like a liquidator. But they do good volumes and they're expanding like crazy. So, but I am concerned, and I think that we are going to have to get aggressive. We are in the retail strategy. We're proposing a bunch of incentives that we might be able to attract people with, and so we can talk about that when we get into the retail strategy stuff. But yeah, it's something to be concerned about. But we're trying to put together a plan to deal with it.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to know about that. One of the businesses I own in Aurora is at Hamden and Chambers, where we now have a vacant Walgreens and a vacant Big Lots. We already have the police security cameras out in the Walgreens parking lot because of the crime. These vacancies just bring a lot of different issues. So I'm witnessing that at Hamden and Chambers, and then the other business I own in Aurora is at I Live in Chambers, which we now have a vacant Walgreens. So I am growing increasingly concerned on the lack of business that we are attracting to this city, as well as retaining retaining these businesses, and the numbers that you just showed me, I think further concern me. So I would certainly like to know what the plan is, and I would like for that plan to be somewhat expedited. I'd also like to know, do we have a seat at the table with Ollie's, with Burlington? Are we actively talking to these folks? I just find this very, very, very concerning, and maybe it's because I am in the retail world myself, and have storefronts in Aurora, but the presentation you just presented is very concerning to me.
And we did just check up we got a call yesterday actually from Council Member Lawson about that center, about the lighting in that center, where the Big Lots is, and that it's not being maintained. And so we're in touch with the owner and trying to get them to upgrade the lighting. And that's another one of the incentives that we had come up with whenever there was a landscaping, lighting, kind of like degradation, that we might have some sort of an incentive to, if they get some sales tax producers, we maybe help put up some money for the lighting, maybe to brighten the parking lot up and help with crime. But that's just one of the proposed incentives. I think we have about 8 of them in order to. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I also am concerned, but we just did all the retail strategies with each ward to identify vacant spaces and demographics. What is your team actually doing day to day to attract these businesses? Like, are you guys contacting, the owners of the shopping centers, the brokers, I guess this is great, but it's mostly, even though you have the sales numbers for our city, it's mostly like national trends of what's happening, but I'd like to know more specific to the city of Aurora. So is that something that you guys I know you're looking at incentives, but we don't have to wait for incentives. We need to just be talking to people to find out, like, what are they even looking at Aurora? Do they even know Aurora exists?
Yes. You'd be surprised how many people know Aurora exists. And so when we're talking to them, they're already aware that how large we are. They're already aware of all of their competitors are here. They're aware of what their sales are. They are actually incredibly informed. And so,
but do we contact them? Like, do you guys have, these are who we call every single week? Like, do we do that?
Right now we're in the middle of the strategy. And as we come out of the strategy, the first thing we're going to be doing is contacting all the landlords, because one of the things we want to talk about is, are you interested in renovating your shopping center? Because we have a lot of shopping centers that need renovation. And so,
well, I mean, if you give me the list, I will be happy to make phone calls, because I can't wait for whatever strategies to be done. I mean, I just like to make phone calls and start contacting people.
And by the way, that book you sent over, Françoise, we have a different version of that book. They're very expensive books, but we can get those.
Okay.
And Chair Bergan, if I may.
And after Janine, I do see the mayor also has his hand up. Sorry.
This is actually in response to both what you and Council Member Jurinsky have raised. Janine Rustad, Director of Planning and Business Development. By way of an example, with Big Lots, I believe Bob and his team did approach the property manager there to ask if they wanted our assistance, and we were told no, thank you. And same with where the Kohl's is going out. Bob, can you elaborate a little more?
Yes, the Coles was at 86,000 feet. There's a 50,000 footer going in of the 86, so it'll leave 36,000 feet left. So it's another anchor. They haven't let us tell everyone who it is yet, but it's a name that you know. So that one's pretty much off the market. And then they have Ace Pickleball going in the other space.
So especially where we learn of these anchor tenants going out, as you may recall, these are crucial to the health of a center. We are attempting to work with property owners, and more of that will be coming. There is still work being done even while we work on the strategy. Right now, a big part of the division is gearing up for ICSC, which we hope to be able to meet with additional retailers and attract them to Aurora.
Great. Mayor Kaufman?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. What percentage of these sales do you think are internet sales versus brick and mortar retail sales?
Tom, if you want to jump in and describe how we separate internet sales, or maybe Andrew knows that. Tom's the one that handles that, but I think Andrew knows how it works.
I think that the marketplace is saying an average around 17%. We don't have the exact numbers. We can pull like what Amazon's doing and things like that. And but there's a lot of retailers. You can total them up, but you can't get exact numbers.
Okay.
So you think it's 17%? You're saying 17% of the sales?
If you go online and you're looking at what some of the statistics are and looking at pulling together some of the information that the city has, it seems like it's around 17%.
Okay.
I think that's important because I think we may have a surplus of brick and mortar retail in the city. And I think if we look at some of these, like I think Councilmember Jurinsky mentioned the northeast corner of Hamden and Chambers. I mean, that where where the Big Lots store, I guess, is closed. And even if you look here right by the AMC on the northeast corner again of Chambers and Alameda, I mean, that is really a very marginal retail center and really needs to be redeveloped into probably a mixed use development. And so I think we probably need some sort of incentive package in that direction as well. And I think a question on the Walgreens, you mentioned, it was mentioned 1,200 Walgreens stores closing. Is that in addition to the ones that have already closed, or is that include the ones that have already closed, or do you know that?
I don't know that. I know that they announced that they were closing 1,200. I don't know which one was first. Which they closed ours as ours was on the list of closings. We did know that one was closing a couple of weeks early because we had people in there noticing there was no inventory.
Right.
But we finally got a hold of the owners and found out it was closing.
Okay. Do we have any CVS stores in Aurora?
Oh, I'm pretty sure we do. I can look them up.
Targets.
They seem to be more East Coast.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay.
Mayor, real quick, there was one at Quincy and Reservoir, but that shut down years ago and it remains vacant and the parking lot is filled with food trucks.
Okay. And then we have Bed Bath and Beyond in Aurora.
Yeah, we've
They
got one
closed
off
mine.
of Parker Road.
Okay. Okay. And do we have Joann's in Aurora? Because
They
they've
closed
all
it.
closed nationally, right?
Yeah. They
Okay.
tried to sell first. So the first time they announced closings, they were saying they weren't closing the store we had. But then the sale fell through, so they had to liquidate.
Okay. Those are all my questions. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay.
Chair.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, you just said we do have a Bed Bath and Beyond on Parker Road. Are you referring to Parker and Chambers?
I'm to an ex Bath and Beyond bed. It's closed a while ago.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
it's closed. I thought you were saying
Yeah.
that we had one on Parker Road. Okay,
No, I mean like we have a vacant one, and we're hoping that's one of the ones
Got it.
that gets backfilled.
got it. Yep.
Yeah, and my Bed Bath and Beyond was closed years and years ago. That's the one that they put Boleros in.
Okay.
Yeah, with the vacant incentive, space incentive. So, Bob, is anybody else pursuing the incentive that we put in place for the vacant spaces?
We don't advertise like an incentive, like we call them, and when
yeah.
we find out what their issue is, we try to point to the incentive that works for them if we
Yeah.
have one. Some of them that we're proposing, we haven't talked about because we haven't gotten any word whether we're going to do like facade upgrades or security grants, things like that. We're not mentioning those yet because we don't know if we're going to be able to do them.
Okay. All right. And Mayor Kaufman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the restaurant situation, Denver is just
Yep.
bleeding restaurants.
Yep.
Relative to Denver, how are we doing?
Not bleeding as bad. Denver's got kind of a double whammy in that not only did they get hit by the everyone leaving offices and now the whole downtown's vacant, they also upped the minimum wage, and that really took the profit margins out of a bunch of the owners' side of the business, and so they are trying everything they can they're trying to change the tipping laws now, I think. And I think actually they voted on that, I think, in the last few days on whether
the
or not they
legislature.
will.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So they're in a much worse shape than we are because we don't have what is it, $20 an hour minimum wage, something like that.
It's close to 20. And are we stable in terms of the number of restaurants in Aurora? In other words, do we have ones opening for the ones closing, or are we in a net negative position?
We're about even.
Okay.
The difficulty is when like a Red Lobster goes vacant, whoever owns that Red Lobster is not Red Lobster. It's like some investor, and then we have to get a hold of that particular investor. When we find them, they usually have like 30 of these, and this is only one of them. And so that's like with the Big Lots. We're in touch with the owner of the Big Lots. They're in Boca Raton. They own like 40 Big Lots buildings, but they don't own Big Lots.
Oh,
So
I see.
Big Lots leaves, and we have to deal with him. And he's got multiple locations, but only one of them's in Aurora. And so
Okay.
it's a slow process, but they're very interested in talking to us.
Okay.
So-
But we're stable on the restaurant business, you're saying?
No.
I would say we're about stable. If you take a look at our numbers, we're about stable on the total sales tax we're getting out of the restaurants. But I would say that we're still in a shakeout mode with restaurants. There are still restaurants that are suffering, but they are getting backfilled. Turnkey restaurant space is still hot. If you have a vacant restaurant that's already set up to be a restaurant, it's much easier to lease them.
And I
Yes,
would
ma'am.
disagree because I have how many in Southlands that are vacant, and they've been vacant for a long time. And I
Right.
don't understand why we can't attract them to when you look at our demographics, they're really great. So I know I'm preaching to the choir, but like every single day on Nextdoor or Facebook, I get questions about why can't we get anything in Southlands that, a new restaurant. And they're like, we just go to the tech center, we go to Parker to dine.
Yeah. I can't talk a lot about how Southlands does business, but I can say that they are very conservative with who they do business with. And they did try doing business with mom and pop restaurants and got burnt pretty bad.
Yeah.
So their investors said, go back to people that know what they're doing. And it turns out that when you deal with national chains, they never want the equipment that's in there because they have their own equipment. They have it all figured out.
Wow.
And so that equipment's actually a negative. They have to get that equipment out of there. So it's one of the few places where, because you deal with only the most professional restaurant operators and they already have their kitchens figured out, you have to gut the place. And we're trying to figure out if we have some way where we can get a hold of that restaurant equipment and maybe help a smaller player in another shopping center in Aurora, because they're just going to get rid of it.
Yeah.
But they are very tough on who they do business with. And But I do think they have one restaurant in their back pocket right now they're talking about. They won't tell us the name of it.
I know. It's driving me crazy.
It drives us crazy too, but that's part of the business.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Bob.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, so next, we just have miscellaneous matters. Chance, are you here for the Havana bid update?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you to everyone that attended our networking event last night. It was amazing to connect city staff and resources, as well as some of the Small Business Development Center programming. So thank you so much that we're able, or to those that were able to join us, and we're hoping to schedule more. Regarding openings, I did put in the message in the chat. We are getting a Dave's Hot Chicken. It's a parcel redevelopment. So unfortunately, it takes a few years. And I was told by that property management company that we're expecting more like 2026 because it takes a minute to build the building out. And one of the big things I wanted to share in this meeting, because I don't think it's getting enough attention or PR, but others that have lived in other states, Daiso is coming to Southlands and on Havana Street. And it just has a cult following.
Yep.
And I know it's going to bring a significant amount of sales tax and also visitors, as well as different residents from different areas. And I do believe their grand openings it got delayed. So they will be in early April. And that's going to be at Village on the Park. Regarding restaurant leases, I know I reached out to Bob and Tom. We do have dozens as a restaurant lease available. We have 10 Second Rice Noodle. They are operating. And then Benya Ramen and Poke opened September 1st and closed January 1st. So that lease is available as well, or for negotiations at least. I know that owner is looking to put a mala restaurant in there if there isn't another tenant that wants to take over his lease. But yeah, Havana's still 96, 97% leased. We have Gibby's, which is like 7,000 or 8,000 square feet. But just like Bob mentioned, it's challenging to find a tenant that'll take on that kind of square footage. But Gibby's has been empty for a significant period of time. And I wasn't familiar about the incentive program that Bob just mentioned. So maybe that would be one that we could also promote and support. But if anybody has any questions, please reach out. We have our upcoming events, and the night markets will begin in May through September. And I just appreciate you all, and thank you so much for supporting on Havana Street.
I have a question for you, Chance.
Of course, yes.
Sorry, my phone, by the way, the button won't work anymore, so I can't turn off this stupid sound. So I apologize. Anyway, when you're talking to these restaurant owners in your area, do you ever hear that they do want to have a second location?
Yes, actually, quite a few of Havana restaurants actually have multiple locations. A lot of our businesses have been around for a long time, especially the Mexican restaurants. I do know El Tequileño was approached by Del Taco to purchase all the Del Tacos that have gone out of business. He wanted to do a fast express kind of drive-through concept. He's not going to buy all of them, but I know
Yeah.
that is an expansion El Tequileño is looking into. But yes, a lot of them are looking at new locations. I think the challenge is just like Bob mentioned, inflation, workforce, staffing, all the other things that make it really hard to run a bar and restaurant right now. So
Yeah.
restaurants are struggling. I won't lie to you. I know Bob said we're kind of stagnant right now. I do expect more closure announcements. Just like Bob mentioned, I can't announce them yet. I just announced a few that we're willing to share. Some are legacy and they want to retire and be grandparents. Others just can't keep up with the cost. And honestly, staffing a restaurant, a large scale restaurant. So
Yeah.
we do expect long time businesses that have been in Aurora for a long time to close, which is why I reached out to Tom and Bob so that maybe we can get something on the calendar to kind of discuss some opportunities for them to, I know just Janine mentioned reselling to somebody, because
Yeah.
a lot of these businesses are really successful. They just don't have another family member or partner or VC to reinvest and also sell to. So we do expect restaurant closures, unfortunately.
Yeah. I guess due to inflation cost of food and that type of thing. Bob, you have your hand up? Oh.
Yeah,
And then
I would say Chance is probably the person that recommends more restaurant operators to us than like everyone else combined. So whenever anything going on Havana, when they're looking for space, they call us, and when they're, and so I just wanted to mention that we're all over that situation with on Havana. So.
And Councilmember Jurinsky?
Yeah, just to weigh in on this. So what really why the restaurant industry, why you're seeing more closures and we expect more closures. I mean, Denver has just buried their restaurants. That's why we're seeing them fleeing in droves. But for the rest of us, really where the suffering is coming is state legislation. Like our state legislation last year banned styrofoam to-go boxes and has forced us to all use plastic to-go containers, which literally cost 4 times the amount. But meanwhile, plastic bags in the grocery store are bad, very bad. But the state legislation has forced us into plastic to-go containers, which are 4 times the cost. And then the state legislation has put things on all businesses, like the family paid leave and the mandatory retirement accounts. And again, in our industry, we run on very, very thin margins when it comes to food. So maybe other industries are able to absorb some of those costs. My industry, my employees, I employ a lot of single moms. They don't care about any of this. They don't care about the family leave. They don't care about the mandatory retirement account. None of them really have an interest in putting their paychecks or their money into those accounts right now. So it's actually state legislation that is killing our industry as a whole. But then if you double down and look specifically at Denver, what they are doing with their minimum wage and everything else that they already have on Denver businesses, the restaurant industry again just runs on such thin margins. That's truly what's happening to the restaurant industry and why we are suffering the way that we are.
Thank you.
On that note, I just was on a panel of economic development folks talking about how they're dealing with the situation with restaurants, and they had someone from Denver on there talking about how they were incentivizing restaurants to open in some of these places that are closing. And what they had come up with is something like, if you sign a lease by the end of the next month, we'll give you $15,000 towards opening your restaurant. And that worked. I think they got 6 restaurants opened in that time period based on that incentive. So it's just something they thought up and to try to get people in the space. But right now, restaurants are getting hit from all sides. There's inflation coming in from your food costs, your labor costs are going up. You've got the national chains giving food away in order to just keep the place filled. So it's a very tough time to be in the restaurant business. And it doesn't look like it's getting any better anytime soon. So it's there's probably going to be a bit of a shakeout, but there seems to always be interested folks ready to take over existing places other than Southlands. So yeah, I agree. We're probably at a crossroads right now with the restaurant business. There may be a bit of a shakeup. There will be people that fill it back in, but the one thing I wanted to mention when Chance was talking about legacy businesses, she didn't call them legacy businesses, but we did get a council person asking, do we have incentives for legacy businesses that have been in Aurora for a while? If they're struggling, can we keep them open? So we don't have an incentive right now. We'd like to come up with one that would help legacy businesses, but we're not exactly sure how to word that.
Bob, on that, I mean, if truly like they want to now spend time with their grandchildren and enjoy their life, and they've been operating for 20, 30, 40 years, can we just help them get a new owner to take over so that they don't completely shut down?
We could, well, if they're doing that, then they've probably listed the property, a turnkey operation for sale as a business. We
Okay.
don't generally get involved in people buying businesses. It's a little out of our sort
Yeah.
of our lane. But we totally understand how those work. And if we had someone that was looking to buy existing restaurants, we would be showing them everything we have.
Okay. I see Janine has her hand up.
Yes, just one of the programs that SBDC started last year was an exit strategy to try to find these businesses that want to sell or retire and help them with a strategy to keep them in the business still going.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that. Okay. Anything else? All right. We'll move on to, I think, Naomi, are you giving a report on the Chamber of Commerce?
Just a brief one. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us here today. I do want to say that we've had several ribbon cuttings going along, and one of them that was really interesting at a tinting company that is over off of Abilene. When he was going through the process of moving into Aurora, he had a really wonderful experience with the SBDC and planning department, and he was just like, I just want to invite them to my ribbon cutting and show them the fruits of their labor and celebrate with them my opening of my business. And we were like, well, duh, what a great idea. So we're going to make sure that we put the planning department and SBDC on our invitation list along with city council, just so that you can see when a business is opening out there. And while it's not maybe a significant or large business, if it's in your ward or your area, we'd love to have you come and join and celebrate with them. He is super, super excited about it. Really enjoyed the process going through with the city, which we were so happy to brag about. We hear about all the challenges that people are having in Denver. So go Aurora. We were super excited to hear that. So we're going to make sure that we continue to invite you guys to those ribbon cuttings. We're on our second one for Quick Trip gas stations. They are opening 8. And for those of you guys who are more intimately known with the chamber, they kicked us out of our old location right off of Alameda and Crystal. So that building is going to be a Quick Trip right across the street from the mall. But they're going to open 8 of them. So we have our second one coming up. We'll make sure you get your invitations for that. It's a different concept in regards to gas stations. So we'll see how that goes. And then finally, on April 11th, we have our upcoming annual awards dinner to celebrate businesses and leaders in the community. I hope you're able to join us on that. We'll be out at the Hyatt Regency on Colfax, and it should be a great night for celebrating businesses in Aurora and business leaders. So that is my report. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Naomi. And I don't think we have any other reports. Brad, I know oil and gas, we just confirmed Monday night. Is it 2 people to oil and gas? Polly Page and somebody.
Yeah, Polly Page and Katie Gillen. She's
Yeah.
industry representative now, so we have a full complement of 11 folks on our committee. So thank you to City Council for appointing those 2 folks.
All right,
Thank
great.
you.
Okay, and unless there's any further questions, I'll wait for anybody to raise their hand. No, okay. Our next meeting is April 9th, same time, same place. So have a great day. Thanks, everyone.